Everyone, welcome to the LeapSheep Startup Builder Live Q&A. I'm your host, Kirk Drage, the CEO and co-founder here at LeapSheep. This is where founders come to ask questions that are slowing them down and learn from people who have built systems that actually work in the real world. At LeapSheep, our mission is simple, to flip the startup success rates and help founders reach the success that they know that they can achieve. We do that by a diagnostic system that we've built over years of working with founders to help them avoid expensive mistakes and apply the right strategy in the right order to help them execute, find traction and product market fit. If you're joining us live on LinkedIn or YouTube, please drop in a comment and tell us where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear. Let's jump in. Today's conversation is about deploying AI in practice, not tools, not prompts, not the technology side, more about the people and the business side of how you actually get systems deployed in production at scale. As AI becomes the heart of every business going forward, we can see the hype and excitement in the market. And today I'm joined by the wonderful Michelle Hill, an AI execution specialist and founder of Discover Your Edge. Michelle works with founders and leadership teams who know AI matters but don't want more noise. That sound familiar? Her background spans over 30 years across sales leadership, operations, marketing, and consulting. She's backed by an MBA and a science degree, and her focus is very practical. She clarifies priorities, redesigns workflows, embeds AI into real work, and focuses on delivering real measurable ROI. Her clients often claim 10 plus hours per week in the first month and see tangible results within 90 days. She works with founders who feel like AI looks promising, but it's messy, experiments that they try on their desktop but don't necessarily scale into production, and help the tools get better and faster outcomes. Michelle, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. It's like I'm listening to my introduction thinking, gosh, I sound quite good.
You are quite good. You're very impressive. When we first met last year, I obviously work with startup founders, and that's what this show is all about. But I was particularly enamored by our conversation because you're out there doing it every day, getting it into production. I think that's what a lot of the founders that are watching this show, they're building products that need to go into production, but you're dealing with those gnarly problems of how do you deal with the people in the business, the leadership, the budget decisions, the decisions of when to deploy, when to experiment and just pilot. So I'm really looking forward to today's discussion.
Thank you.
But before we jump into that, let's talk a little bit about your background, because you've got an amazing background that I think one of the things we were talking about before the show is how valuable first principles are when it comes to dealing with this new world of AI. And if you can sort of strip things back to first principles, you get a much better sense of how to go forward. And I think that's what I think of when I look at your career experience. Is you've got some fabulous experience in sales and marketing, but coaching employees as well. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and how you arrived at running this business.
Well, as with most people, sometimes you look back and you think, now how did I actually get here? Because you like to think that you've thought about it carefully and planned your life out, and this is where I'm going to get to by this age, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But then you get to this Y junction where, and I'll use the terms, there's the sensible, logical decision, and there's the decision that inside you're going, that's what I really want to do. But everybody's going to think I'm crazy. So I guess for myself, it's like, as I said, in the intro, I do have a science background, which led me into initially the food industry, where I was dealing with lots of technical sales and developing of products and supplying ingredients. And for most of my sales career, it was all based around relationships, selling B2B with products that they're going to consume. So it's not like fast moving consumer goods, but in the business to business environment, a lot of it is about building up trust, building up credibility, getting your products tested and approved, understanding the fact that, if you want to sell to a business, like you're actually selling to people, but in one business, you might have to talk to 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 different people which can be very frustrating. And also, you've got to try and remember that just because in your head it's a number one priority, on their list you might be number 10. So
yeah,
but a lot of that work, it led me to start to think about, okay, how do I best help the people that work for me? And then around about, I think it was about 10 or 11 years ago, my partner and I decided that wouldn't it be a great idea to start our own business, and let's do an online digital membership business. And we had zero knowledge and experience of how to do this. So
it's a good place to start.
Okay.
It's a good place to start.
I know. Well, again, we started with the passion, and wouldn't this be a great idea? Let's jump into this. Wait, what have we got ourselves into? Let's step back a little bit and start to think this through. And we did, but trust me, it was a steep learning curve. And it also started a lot of personal development work for myself, because particularly when you run a business with your partner, there's some advantages.
We lost Michelle.
I'm back. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, we lost you there for a second.
It just said connection lost. So yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, good.
What was I saying? Oh yes, when you run a business with your partner, or even with a really close friend, you have to. There's times when you could be having what I could classify as robust discussions, and you think, is this actually, like, are we having an argument as a couple, or are we discussing a business issue or pointing the finger at you didn't do this? So there's a lot of those sort of things to consider as well. And that actually led me to, okay, I want to understand how to coach people, and I want to be able to coach and help people and have the skills to do that properly, not just, oh, this feels like the right thing to say. And so I started doing business coaching around helping people be more productive, more systemized, manage their time better, which were all important skills, like in the sales arena that I'd been in.
Yeah.
And then ChatGPT was launched a bit over 3 years ago. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I started playing around with it. And then not long after that, we actually moved from Brisbane to the beach. And I thought, I think I might just put my feet up for a couple of months and just dial things down. And I just wanted to enjoy being at the beach. But in hindsight, what I unintentionally done was given myself time and space to actually like learn, digest, understand, and also think about, okay, if my coaching business is based around helping people be more productive, here's this like productivity tool on steroids, basically.
Yeah.
So if I focus on that, then I'm still going to be achieving my purpose, but perhaps AI will be there. I mean, still the coaching and helping people run their business well underlies all of that, but my main focus these days is around AI. From my perspective, a lot of it is about helping people to understand, how do you use a large language model and how can it help and impact on your business. And I'm savvy enough to understand that when we get to a certain level of technology and software, that's where I say, I need an expert to come in and support. So, I do partner with people as well, so that for a specific project, we can provide what a business wants, because sometimes it's not just training and sometimes it's not just tech support.
Well, I want to pause you there and just bring some of these points in for founders that are listening.
Yeah.
Because some of what you just covered there, I think are often not covered immediately when founders start businesses. So if you're, if maybe there's one or two of you and you're maybe doing some outreach to customers, because you're starting off with some market discovery, which is a great place to start, or you've jumped straight into building a product. A lot of those stressful discussions that you talk about, those pressured discussions when you're running a business, haven't yet surfaced, because you might have 6 months of runway, and so you don't have those pressured business discussions. But when you've got payroll to pay and the money's not coming in, that's when tensions begin to fray, and those kind of discussions that you're talking about really come to the fore, and the skills to be able to manage those kind of discussions become really important.
Yeah.
And so having those skills is really key, and also with customers, as you're starting to deal with customers, being able to unpick the understanding of where is the customer in their journey of understanding of their own problem.
Yes.
Versus where you are in your journey, and often you're way ahead of the customer, and so you talk to the customer about all the things that that they probably need, but that's not where they're at yet.
No.
And so a lot of these people skills are so important, aren't they?
They are, and I mean, one of the fundamental things about coaching is to listen, and one of the fundamental things about selling is to listen. But you are so true about, and I found that myself, even just 12, 15 months ago, when I would say to people, I can help you understand and learn how to use, large language models like ChatGPT, I was getting responses like, what's that? Or, oh, my business is different, I don't need that.
I don't need it.
Yeah. And that is such the answer that, when what you were just saying before about, customers being at a different place on the journey. And sometimes we do forget when we're like so in the weeds, and we know intimately every benefit that our product can bring to a client. You can't see the fact that they don't see any of that.
No.
And there's a lot of statistics around people who buy. There's only like about 3%, I think it is, who, when you talk to them the first time or the second time, are actually ready to buy. Then there's and I can't remember the exact numbers, but then there's a percentage where they're problem aware, but they don't even know what the solution might even look like.
Yeah.
And then there's a big chunk of people that don't even know they've got a problem yet.
Yeah.
And if you're the one that comes along and says, hey, you've got a really big problem in your business, they might not like you.
That's scary, right?
Might not be the right approach.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting with a lot of founders that we work with, and I was certainly in this category, because I'm a chronic introvert, recovering introvert. Is you have this romantic notion that you might be able to build a technology business where you don't actually have to talk to people. You sit behind the keyboard, you build some amazing product and launch it through the internet, and you don't need to talk to people. That rarely, I mean, it does work. I think enough to keep the dream alive, but it's a pretty rare edge case, right?
Yeah, and more these days, it's becoming more about personal brand rather than business brand as well. I'm not a marketing expert, but this is what I'm seeing, in that, particularly if you follow people who are very successful, what you will notice is that, yes, their business is there, but they are becoming the product in the brand. And I think it takes a very deliberate and well thought out strategy to run a faceless marketing campaign to sell a product. And as I said, please don't take this as direct marketing advice. Please go and talk to marketing people who are probably going, holy shit, Michelle, what do you say? But it is important. And building your personal brand doesn't mean you have to be on video. If you're comfortable, you can. But personal brand can be you just getting out, and this is an interesting thing that's, I feel, and I've noticed it for me personally in the last 12 months, that after COVID, we got into the habit of doing a lot of online meetings and networking, which is really good because it actually allows you the ability to connect with a lot more people and people who are not in your immediate area. But the flip side of that is you start to lose that personal interaction and touch. And for myself, over the last 6 months, I've done more in-person meetings and networking. And because I work by myself, I'm finding that a lot more, I guess fulfilling is not the right word, but it actually feels like the relationships develop faster.
Yeah.
And when I think back to during my career, like as a salesperson, you were expected to physically go and see the customer. Now, over my career, I've been based in Brisbane and Sydney and Vancouver, but I always used to have to get on a plane and go and see people. And I used to travel in Asia and all around Australia. And sometimes you would get to an airport, pick up a hire car, drive for 3 hours, turn up to your meeting, and they forgot you were coming. But don't ever discount the value of doing those in-person things. And particularly for founders, like if you have specific targets that you're looking for or specific businesses that you want to target, making the effort, like if you make the effort to go somewhere, particularly if you have to travel a fair way, people notice. And, that becomes part of how they evaluate whether they want to work with you or not.
Yeah. It's a scarcer commodity, isn't it? Your physical presence is a scarcer commodity, and who you decide to give that to signals who you care about, right?
Yeah. And I know, travel isn't always the most fun thing, particularly overseas travel. But it's like anything, evaluate, okay, what is the investment to do this strategy versus what is my potential return, and is it going to bring this to us quicker than it could have?
Yeah.
Exactly. I over the years, what I found too is, like, particularly when you do travel, and you meet people in their business environment, but then you have a chance to either have a meal with them or, just catch up outside of that business environment. Often that's where the most progress is made.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's got nothing to do with AI, but
let's bring AI back into this conversation. How have you found that physical presence has changed the ability to help customers? Because obviously the customers that you're working with are the business people that are going, well, I know that I probably need AI, but I'm really not sure what to do with it.
Yeah.
And this is the same problem that many founders are facing, is like, they know what the AI is capable of, but now I just need to find a customer and convince them to try the AI and prove that it can do the thing.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through how those conversations are playing out when you've got a curious customer and you need to take them on that journey?
Yeah. The journey for me is fundamentally what we want to do is solve the customer's problem or problems. And if you don't understand that, then you're not going to progress. So you've got to do, like, I would call it a diagnostic step or an investigative, or, you can't progress with somebody unless they feel like you're on the same page as them. And you can't do that unless you have knowledge and understanding of, how their business runs, where the bottlenecks are, where the problems are, who are the people who are champions, who's likely to sabotage you, because I've seen that sometimes in the past, not with AI, but with selling food ingredients. And once you have all that information, you then have, like, amazing, you've got AI to take all of that information and start to create reports and feedback for your client, so that they can then understand, okay, this is really what my problem is, and this is what the solution could look like. And one of the other things I wanted to mention too is, particularly if you're looking for a large engagement or a large spend from your client, obviously they are going to be looking for, like, what is my return on investment? And how do I understand, if I spend this amount of money with you, that I'm going to get the benefit that you're telling me I'm going to get?
Yeah.
And
So,
one of the
sorry, I just wanted to drill down on the gap from, hello, you don't know me, I'm Michelle, to we're now looking at, the return on investment for you. Some of this can happen pre-sale and some of this can happen post-sale.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about the kind of approach that you use pre-sale to build trust and credibility, build relevance? Because I think this is one of the issues that founders often struggle with is, how do I be relevant? How do I build trust and credibility? Do we even get to that point?
Yeah. So simply, like, when I meet someone for the first time, like, I have a whole list of questions that I work through, because I need to understand enough about the business so I can make some informed decisions about whether can I help this person? Like, is what I do going to help them, for a start? And then the way that I look at it in terms of turning it from here's a discussion to here's the product that you're paying for, is it's a two-part process. So essentially what we say to people, like, they can commit to the whole project with us if they want, or the better way to do it is say, okay, let's do phase one, which is the diagnostic phase. And depending on the size of the organization and the complexity, like, that will dictate how much we charge for that. But that involves, the interviewing people in the organization. So say for an organization maybe of 50 or 60 people, you might interview 12 or 15 people in various areas of the business, because you want to cover off. You don't want to just focus on leadership team, because you'll get very different impressions from leadership versus to the people who actually are sitting at the desk outside the office and doing the work. And that was a lesson I learned many years ago when I first started working in the food industry. The first company I worked for, I went through a 4-week induction. So I was employed as a salesperson, and I spent 4 weeks working in every department in the business. And that meant 2 weeks of doing shifts out on the production floor, which was not fun. But what I learned about the company from talking to the people who were doing the stuff was invaluable. So during my sales career, I always used to say, hey, are we allowed to go out on the production floor and see how everything's going?
Yeah.
So I could actually talk to the people who were using the product as well. So
that goes back to the presence we were talking about earlier, wasn't it? If you take the time, you get a lot more respect from not only the people on the production floor, but also the management to go, actually, you care enough to go do that. You must actually be interested in me, not just in yourself.
As I said, some of the nuggets that you get, particularly when the person who's escorting you has to wander off for a phone call, you can talk to someone. But that's part of your relationship selling. But back to the process. So it's like, let's gather all the data, let's analyze it, and let's show them, excuse me, and I talked about ROI before. So let's look at, okay, how much time is being wasted, i.e., can we save the company time? Where is there leakage? Like, for example, if we improve for a sales process, how quickly things can be done for the salesperson, then that means they have more time to follow up leads. So leads get followed up more quickly. Ergo, you get more business out of that. So even though it's not a time-saving thing, it is part of your ROI because you've created the space for the person to do that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we like to look at too is how can you have that revenue upload? So the way I explain that to people is, if you can now do in 4 days what you used to do in 5, on that 5th day, what are you actually going to do? Are you going to do more of that boring, repetitive stuff that you've just automated and just do more of that? Or do you now have the opportunity to actually stop and think and do more value add work, which is, and sorry, I keep using sales examples, but from a sales perspective, be more prepared for your meetings. Do more research on where else could we target the market? What's happening with my budget? Am I reaching my targets? What am I missing? How many more calls do I need to do? All of those sort of things that
I'm working on your business, not in it.
Yeah. So all of the things that you normally start the week with good intentions, but then the phone rings and customer's got a problem, or something's broken, and your whole day gets derailed, and then the rest of the week is a nightmare because you're trying to play catch up.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, everything you're saying here. You're still on the problem space for the customer.
Yes.
And I think this is one of the things that I'm constantly chatting about with founders, is when you've got an idea for a product, you can see that the market's got a problem and you've built a product.
Yeah.
You often fall into the trap of wanting to tell the customer about your product as soon as you meet them.
Yes.
And going back to what we were saying earlier, the customer is not necessarily ready for that.
No.
And everything you're describing is how much value you can add just by spending time on the product, on the problem side rather. And it's value to the customer, because they're like, okay, you're helping me think through what I actually need and what's valuable to me and what's not valuable to me. And without you having this conversation, I've got to find another way of doing that. So it's real value that you can charge for.
Yes.
But as a startup founder, it's also important market discovery to know, well, what does the market actually care about? How do they think?
Yeah.
You need to sell based on how your customer thinks, not just the problems they have.
Yeah, I was going to say, and people might think, oh, well, it might be a waste of time if you do all this, then they don't want your product. Well, you don't do all of this for them to not choose your product, because you structure everything so that by the time you get to, here's the ROI, here's all the problems we've identified, and this is how you can solve these problems. Oh, look, we've got the solution for you. So you backwards in terms of what questions you're going to ask people, so that you're uncovering the problems that lead to your solution. You don't just randomly randomly say, hey, what's really annoying you at the moment. I mean, I'll just tell one quick funny story where when I was training a lady from an electrical contractors company last year, we got to the module where we were working on business modeling and strategic modeling using current models or creating your own model. And she said, I'm not really sure what to apply it to. And I said, well, what is keeping you awake at night? What is the one thing that if we could do this today, you'd be go, oh, now I feel better. And she said to me, I've got to plan my wedding for next year and I've got no idea where to start. So we actually took a business model and we created a wedding planner for her. So that's just something to think about, that sometimes you can go off course, but you still are solving the problem. And it's a reminder that, AI is not always just for business.
Yeah, 100%. But going back to your point there about investigating the customer, you only need to do that process with 4 or 5 customers, and suddenly you're almost an industry expert, aren't you? You don't have to see, because customers only really generally see their own business. Maybe they've changed jobs in the last few years and they've seen one other business. Yeah. It's only 4 or 5 businesses that you see that are doing similar things, and suddenly you're an expert, aren't you? And that adds huge value.
Yes, because once you've done the diagnostic, as you said, once you've done the diagnostic a few times, when you have your initial conversations with your client, if they're still unsure whether to work with you, then you can start peppering your conversations with things like, well, normally at this stage, people with a business like yours would be mentioning blah, blah, blah. So you can start to then, and it's not manipulate, but it's leading the conversation and helping them. But often this is what we use AI for as well, because, you sit down to ChatGPT and you say, tell me like 5 or 6 things I need to think about around this topic. So if I'm having a discussion with somebody and I can, like, they say, oh, this is my issue and this is my issue. And I know full well in that particular industry, they're likely to have 3 more. That's my opportunity to say, like often when I'm talking to people who have businesses like yours, they mention that they have this and this and this. Is that something that is either happening for you now or could happen to you? And again, what that does is it builds your credibility straight away, because the person you're talking to thinks to themselves, oh, this person really gets it. Like they know what they're talking about. So it's all of those little things that you do along the way that build the trust and the credibility. And along the way, like all of that diagnostic phase, like I've got, a whole thing of like feed the answers in and, here's and we get information from, HR for like hourly rates and things like that. So that when you start to talk about this is a potential ROI, you can actually start to put numbers around it. And then what that does, if you're in a selling situation, is if you're showing somebody, say for argument's sake, that within 12 months if everything goes the way it's supposed to, they'd probably be looking at perhaps 500,000 on the bottom line, because a lot of this stuff just goes straight to the bottom line. Then you present your solution, which might be 50, 60, 70,000, but all of a sudden it doesn't look like it's in context and it's congruent. Whereas if you go in thinking like, because some people struggle when they get to like, this is the investment in us that you need to make. And, and that in and of itself is a skill. Where, this is the investment you need to make. You say the number and then you stop. And first one to blink loses. But you know what I mean? It's a matter of framing, and because sometimes if you don't show the value really clearly, then that's when you start to hear objections, because they don't see it, they don't get it, and they can't visualize how is this going to benefit.
How's the value going to be created?
And if I invest that amount of money, like, well, what happens if we can't quantify it, or we don't get that return, or like they're just making these numbers up. But it is all to do with the framing and how you actually position it.
I like, someone told me once about framing that kind of sales deal. Like, as a customer, you're going to hand me a check for $50,000 now, and in 12 months, I'm going to hand you a check for $500,000.
Yes.
Does that sound like a good deal to you?
Yeah.
No, obviously. So
I'll take that one every day of the week.
If you can frame your sale in those kind of terms, but you need to spend the time with the customer, which is kind of your point. Is you need to spend the time with the customer.
Like if you're selling
to build that story for them.
If you're selling a $29 a month subscription product, obviously not. But if you have a product which is a large investment, not only of time, of money, but also of the company's time to actually train their staff and integrate it, get it working, and get buy-in from the rest of the staff. Like, time invested in all of that up front is never wasted.
Yeah. To sort of sum this up, spending 2 or 3 months, if you're a startup founder, spending 2 or 3 months out, ideally physically present with customers if you can, or at least doing some physically present calls if you can, out with your customer, go and visit them, 4 or 5 of the same customers, just doing that for 2 or 3 months, and it'll take you, 2 or 3 months to get meetings and get them booked in the calendar and all that sort of stuff. But that could save you a year's worth of effort, because at the end of that time, you really know what's valuable and what's not, and that gives you your product specifications of what you need to build for.
Yeah.
And it also gives you your marketing and sales blueprints.
Yes.
Or how you need to sell.
Yeah.
And often founders are sequencing things in the opposite order. Like, let's build the product first, and then let's take it to the customer.
It's very exciting building a new product.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sometimes it feels like, do we have to follow? This feels like it's going to take forever. And it can, like, you go through that period where you feel like you're the one giving and going, like, talking to people and giving and like, and then you reach this point where you've done enough of that, and you reach like this tipping point where you start to build some momentum and you start to move forward, and not suddenly, but it becomes easier, because also you're more practiced at it as well. For a lot of founders, and we talked before about, if somebody from a technical background is building a product, they may not have ever, if they've come from a corporate environment, they may not ever have been exposed to the sales and marketing side of the business.
How that corporate bought them.
It sometimes, in bigger companies, it's like you're in a silo and stuff comes to you and you send stuff to other departments, but you don't know exactly how it all works.
Yeah. Maybe this has been a fascinating discussion, and I think it's been really helpful. But before we finish up today, I really want to talk about some of your experience actually deploying. Like, once you pass that challenge of, okay, now you know what ROI looks like and the customer's kind of bought in. How do you avoid the death by pilot, which a lot of startups are experiencing, where customers get excited to trial something and then they toss it out and never get production?
Yeah, I think to answer the question that's on the screen, like, what does good AI integration look like, and what should founders be thinking about? If you can actually articulate, like, defined outcomes, and you have clarity around your processes and how your business runs, and you as a founder don't feel like you're the bottleneck and everything if you're the only person in the company, that's different. But even with that, as a founder, like, you don't have to do everything yourself. You don't exist in isolation. You have networks of people. And this was a concept that I talked about before we came on air, was, the old saying of, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to build a successful business. And if you're doing that by yourself, make sure that you are surrounding yourself with like-minded people with different skills who can help you. And I'm not necessarily saying, you have to go out and, like, spend money employing this person, this person, this person, this person. You can go to networking events and talk to experts for 10 or 15 minutes. And most people want to help, and they will help you. But really, that fundamental thing of, your business feels like it's actually running. Well, I don't want to put the mockers on everybody, but running smoothly, and you do have that clarity, and things are documented, and it's not like, oh, well, who's responsible for this, or how does that work again?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I thought that was your responsibility. Because one of the other things that solved the issue for my partner and I when we were having arguments about, oh, you were supposed to do that, no, you. Even though it was only the two of us, we actually created a full organizational chart of a business with all the functions in a business. And then we put our names in each box so that in this area, like I was in charge, in this area, he was in charge. Sometimes something as fundamental as that can help. And all of these are contexts that you can put into your large language model when you are doing things so that it understands the structure of your business and who's doing what.
Yeah.
So when it's answering questions for you, like it can say, oh, this is so-and-so and this is how it would be done.
Yeah, it's a great practice. We advocate for that. We call that a role-based org chart as opposed to a person-based org chart.
Yeah.
Is building that out. I want to switch the conversation to deploying AI into customers. What's the experience there in terms of the process that a customer goes through when you're working with your typical customers from that, what is the problem I'm solving, the diagnostics that we talked about earlier, to how can we take a small step? I mean, I think about, you used the words earlier, take a phased approach, I think.
Yes.
I think that's always a good way to think about it. And I don't think founders are always default to thinking in this way. You think about sort of selling a product and that's the only phase. But actually, if you think about things in the phases of the diagnostics, as you said, and then maybe a small pilot that proves something out and before a production deployment, is that how you think about it, or have you got a different model?
No. Once we've done the diagnostic and we've identified, like we might come up with, I don't know, this one that we came up with like 27 different projects. Now, do we want to do all 27? Maybe. Do we want to do them all now? Definitely not. So what we've done is we've created like a grid or a graph or a visual for the client in terms of these are the projects that will give you good or high ROI that are relatively simple and quick to implement. Let's pick one or two from there. Then we have ones that are high ROI but are longer and a little bit more complex, but definitely worth doing in terms of where the business wants to go. Then we have things that, the ROI is a bit lower and it's a bit more complicated to do. And then we have another box, which is like, well, should we really even do this? So, and what that means is, like not everyone's visual, but I like to be able to see like that's what it all looks like. And we also need, like, you don't just go, hey, let's do all this. Like, what is the what's your strategic plan? Where does it fit in the plan? Like, how are we going to allocate resources? Like if people want to do the training program with me, that means allocating an hour a week for 10 weeks for their staff. And like, can we do that without disrupting everybody? Or is there a better time of the year to do that based on, do you have seasonality of, are you really busy at some parts of the year and when does it quieten down? But normally it would be either let's start with the training or let's start with one or two that are going to give you a high ROI and we can have them, up and running, and like an automation or an agent-like product, we can have them up and running within the next 4 to 8 weeks. So then you can start to feel like this is what it looks like and these are the benefits. And it's entirely at the client's discretion of, like we've identified all of this. You might decide you want to do it over 2 years.
I want to pause you here because I think there's a profound insight here for founders, and that is that the competition for a founder trying to sell a product is all of those other projects on that spreadsheet that you've just mentioned. And so as a founder, if you've got no visibility to that spreadsheet of priorities that you're competing against, you don't know where you fit in the pecking order. And so again, the advantage of going and doing this with just a small number of customers. So you start to get a bit of a sense of, if you're ideally, you should be choosing your target market first as a founder. And that target market should be full of very similar customers. So just by doing this in 4 or 5 customers, you start to get a sense of how the industry thinks and who are outliers and who are not outliers.
Yeah.
But knowing, is the product that you've got and the problem that product solves, is that, as you say, is that one of these quick wins that's high ROI, cheap, or is it high ROI and maybe a little bit more complex, or is it just not high enough ROI compared to all the other things on their list? I think that's a really, really important insight that we often skip over in that land because we're not consultants, but sometimes it's worth doing that step to learn.
Oh, absolutely, because it's the same when I work with people and we do a quarterly planning process. Like, we might identify 12 or 15 priorities for the business, but you can't work on 12 or 15 things in the next 3 months.
Yeah.
So, like, what are the 2 or 3 things that you could do next that are going to move the needle the most? And often that's sometimes where we use AI to help us make those sort of decisions. What are the pros and cons of choosing this? What impact will it have on my business? How much time will it take to do this? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Now, can we move to the next phase of the process, which is now once you've figured out what project to work on, how do you go from this is a great idea to we're rolling this out in production? How do you scope that pilot or that initial engagement to prove that it works?
When you say like scope, so if you've got individual projects, like, are you saying how do we scope a project up?
Yeah, let's make a concrete example. Maybe, I don't know, let's stick with the sales function that well. Right. If you've identified that using some AI to help the sales team analyze their calls or whatever, how do you go from, well, that's a high priority idea on our list and we want to roll that out, but before we just deploy it to everybody in production, we should maybe choose 1 or 2 salespeople and just make sure that it works and what the experience is, and how do you sort of think about that?
Well, it's like any project management. You run it through all of the steps that you do when you manage your project. And one of the quick examples that I could give people that can save time is when you do have online meetings these days, most people have some sort of note taker. And I was talking to a business owner the other day, and he said, oh, yeah, I'm using that Fireflies thing. And I said, good. What do you do with the information that you have from the meeting? And he said, what do you mean? I said, but you're gathering information. You tell me that you're really busy. Like, shouldn't you be taking that information, at least analyzing it for like what actions came out of the meeting, who's responsible for what, setting up an email system for reminders, and prior to your next meeting, having an email come to you saying, this is what happened last time, these are the action points, that sort of thing. So it is about, you obviously don't go, okay, you've got like 15 salespeople, let's just change everything they do overnight.
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to happen. What we need is like.
Oops, we've lost Michelle again. Oh, she's back. We've got some internet quality issues here. I think while Michelle hopefully comes back online, she was talking about rolling out AI to potentially a larger sales team of 15 or so people. I always like to think about people, process, and technology as that mental model around who's going to get impacted if you're going to roll out some new technology or product. The people in the process are going to be affected. So how do we test that whole system of people, process, and technology on a small number of staff prove that it can work, prove that we can overcome maybe some onboarding hurdles from a technical point of view, update processes where those processes need to be updated, and also update job roles where those job roles need to be updated. And that's obviously a topic of discussion. No. Here we go. We've got you back. We got you back.
It was so sorry about that. I could see it said it was saying you're backstage. You know, the host will let you in.
I think the internet connection somehow is a little bit dodgy, but I don't know if you heard me there. I was just talking about
I did.
People and process and technology.
Yeah. Because one of the important things too is it's like any project. If you start with one or two people and you have good results with them and they're happy, then the rest of the team gets FOMO, like, hey, why don't we have that? But yeah, and with the training process is a little bit different. That's a 10 session program that people work through. But it's not just like, put in a prompt, like, here's how you prompt. It's how do you use a large language for critical thinking and problem solving and strategic planning and business modeling and all of the business skills that you need, and how do you apply that and use a large language model to help yourself. Sorry, I'm a bit flustered because I dropped out and I was waiting to come back in.
All good. I think we'll take a quick question that's come in on LinkedIn, and let me bring it up here so I can see who it's from. I don't see it in there for some reason. But the question is, hey Kirk, good to see you. Hello Michelle. How do you advise companies founders on how to mitigate the risks of unreliable and biased output of LLMs? It still seems a very misunderstood and unrecognized aspect of Gen AI adoption. That's a great question.
How do we mitigate for the fact that it lies sometimes?
Yeah, I think that's the essence of the question. Yep.
Well, personally, I think we are still at the stage of you must have a human in the loop, and whatever you produce, you as the expert in that area can understand whether that is good output or not good output. So at this stage, and now Kirk's dropped out, so I'm not sure if I'm still talking by myself or what's happening here. So to answer your question about hello.
Sorry, there we go. I'm not sure what's going on today.
You dropped out that time, and I was like, okay, I'll just keep talking.
I can see it's John. Hey, John, how are you? John Flackett. It's good to hear from him.
Yeah. So does that answer the question?
So sorry, I missed all that because we were
all right. So essentially what I was saying is that we still need to make sure that we have that QA step in any process, whatever you create using generative AI. Like you wouldn't get a junior to write a report and send it out with your name on it if you didn't trust that they knew exactly what to do. With generative AI too, you can improve the context by managing what sources that you draw from. I find using Notebook LM quite good for that, because you can specifically put in the sources that you want to analyze and use, and then whenever it's answering a question or you're creating your slide deck or your infographic, it is only drawing on those sources. But yeah, we're not at the point yet where I would say, just press a button and off you go and you can send stuff out. I do think it's also important. ChatGPT is particularly designed to be quite sycophantic and tell you that you're wonderful at everything. When you personalize your Gen AI products, make sure that you put in things like, act as a red team when asked, or, be objective, do not agree with me, give me the pros and cons. So sometimes it's around how you set up the context and the instructions on the way that you want your responses to come out as well.
Yeah, that's great. Great feedback. I think for me, the human in the loop is such an important aspect that we're seeing.
Critical.
You often have to co-develop the product with the customer and figure out how far the technology can go and where you have to draw the line between, okay, this is a QA step that just has to be done by a human being, and that's where our product kind of stops. But we've saved you all this time and energy, and we've created policies and decision trees that perhaps has been in somebody's head that's now codified.
Yes.
Yeah, fabulous. All right, I can't believe we're at the end of the show already. It's been a fun-filled show with some internet challenges. So I appreciate.
Sorry about that. I don't know if it was mine, but
we'll blame the internet gods. It's not our fault, that's for sure.
Yeah. That comes under the adage of technology is wonderful until it isn't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. So before we wrap up, if anyone wants to get in contact with you, there's a couple of QR codes to find your website and connect with you on LinkedIn. Is LinkedIn the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is where I tend to connect with people. And then, the other QR code is to book a meeting, and that is just a discussion to understand what your issues are. And you heard me talk about my sales process, so you'll be a bit wary now, but that's okay. I'm here to help. There's no obligation, so you can come and talk to me and take away as many ideas as you want.
Fabulous. Well, Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. You're an absolute fountain of knowledge. It's been a lot of fun. I wish we had a lot more time. There's a lot more areas that we could delve into, and maybe that's a time for a future show. Maybe we need to invite you back on. But thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. I really appreciate it and had a lot of fun as well.
Me too. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay.
All right, some quick final ads. If you want to find LeapSheep, there's some QR codes on the screen there to find LeapSheep and to find me. And just like Michelle, if you want to connect with my QR code at the bottom there, you can find me on LinkedIn. Very open to having a quick chat with people. If you're a founder that's wishing you had more clarity on how to go about successfully scaling your startup, I'm happy to jump on call and have a quick chat and see whether we can help you or I can point you in the right direction. If you want a little bit more help and you're really certain that you need help, the one thing that we advise most founders to do that are frustrated with their traction, whether you're pre-product and trying to figure out how to build that product, or whether you're post-product and are frustrated with the traction of that product in the market, the one thing I would recommend that you do is a LeapSheep Startup Builder Strategy session. It's a 3-hour engagement where we unpack exactly and diagnose your startup and your situation. No generic startup advice. We use a system and diagnostic tools, and then we build you a 6-month plan for how exactly we recommend that you use your time and resources to get the traction that you need. And you can go away and execute that plan yourself, or we have a support service to help with that, which is our main service at LeapSheep. But there's QR codes on the screen there. The top one is to book that session, and the bottom link there is if you just want to have a chat again. If you're not ready for that commitment yet and you just want to have a chat, you can do that. Look for information online about our next show and our next guest that's coming up. But until next time, thanks very much for listening.